This is an introduction to the Forrest Manufacturing Model 2054 bandsaw. So this is a vertical blade traveling table bandsaw. It's a high-speed machine running a blade speed of 3,000 feet per minute. These machines are meant for cutting things like foam, plastic, insulation, rubber, graphite, some light metals, mostly aluminum, not steel basically, but it uses a high-speed machine. We're running this is a dry blade, not a lubricated application. The 2054 is our big machine. This one, I believe, has a 41-inch vertical working blade length, about a 4-foot, what we call fence throat. That is from the blade over to the fence face is about 48, and I think it's like 54 from the blade over to the table right. And it's got a table stroke of 108 inches. It's meant to cut fully through an 8-foot workpiece. So this machine has pretty much all of the available features and options. First off, it's got an upgrade. The table blade drive motor has been upgraded to a 5 horsepower motor. That is a brake motor, such that when you hit the stop button, the motor stops pretty much instantly. Blade tension uses a pneumatic blade tensioning system. So we've got an air cylinder. I think you can just make out the air cylinder in there. It's controlled with a pressure regulator and an electronic solenoid operated air control valve. More about the tensioning system. So for interlocks, we have obviously a control panel here, fuse disconnect, tension, detension is here on the panel face. So tension now, detention, the blade goes slack, blade fault. So we have an interlock such that if the blade is not tensioned, blade fault won't run. If the blade is broken or missing, blade fault, blade motor won't run. If you don't have at least some minimum threshold air pressure, so basically if somebody forgot to turn the air pressure compressor on that morning, you don't have air pressure on it, it won't run. And again, you can simulate that. On the back side here, we've got all this stuff where you can't see it. We've got a disconnect the air line, red light, machine won't work. And there's a pressure regulator with a gauge back here, manually settable. You'll set that air pressure regulator once to match whatever style valve you're using, and you don't have to change it again. The blade is just tensioned and detensioned correctly. Correct blade tension leads to straighter cuts, longer blade life. So workpiece positioning. So this machine, first off, this is a traveling table machine. So the idea is you put the workpiece on the table and the table moves to make your cut. Does a couple things for you. First off, it makes sure you get a straight cut. You're relying on the table tracking moving to get your straight cut, not on the operator sliding workpiece across the table. This machine also has what we call the guide and drive rail here. We have linear round rail as the guide element. So 3 of the rails are idlers, coasters basically. This one steers, for lack of a better word, the table. So it's moving in just a very straight line. The table moves 2 ways. First off, it has a power table drive. So some of my customers are cutting things that are very heavy indeed. It's like if you're cutting a piece of 8-pound per cubic foot foam and the block is 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot, I can't do the math in my head, but it's a heavier workpiece. You don't want to be moving that manually. So you have controls to operate the saw and move the table. We have them both here on this remote control pivot and on the panel face. So you can start the saw, you can move the table forward, powered. Speed control for the forward direction is here. So spin it up. You have this one's set up for a maximum table speed of about 2 inches per second. Stop it, everything stops automatically. Or you can let it go forward. When it hits the end of table travel, it'll stop the table drive and it'll stop the blade drive motor automatically. For the return direction, The return speed is here on the panel face. Most operators just leave that at full speed all the time. You could slow it down, but really the return stroke is dead time in your cycle. So usually you're just going to leave the return speed at 100%, table return, table comes back to the home position. And again, it'll stop automatically when it hits the end of travel. So you can move the table with powered, but there are cases where you might want to move the table manually. This machine has a clutch, so you can decouple the table from the drive mechanism. There's a handle back here, again, where I'm sorry, you can't see it. But I pull the handle open, come grab what I call the grocery cart handle, and we can move the table manually. You might want to do this because you're cutting something fussy and you want to have manual control of the table speed, or you might want to be servicing the machine, you want to move the table manually. We actually do that quite a lot here. We're getting the machine up, setting into limit switches, setting table direction, all that kind of stuff. We'll just disconnect the clutch and move it manually. It's really handy to have. When you want to return to power table drive, flick the handle the other way, advance, there you go. Now, as far as the controls, I have this set up such that to travel the table in the forward direction, if the saw motor, the blade, is not working, you can press and hold the forward button either here or on the control panel face. Press and hold and it will advance the table. If you release, it stops. The logic of that is I don't want you advancing the table if the saw is not running. It potentially, if you have a workpiece up there, as a for instance, you're trying to cut something, you forget to start the blade motor, you advance the table, and you could hypothetically ram your workpiece into the blade when the blade isn't cutting. Maybe damage your workpiece, certainly damage the blade. We don't want that. So if you start the saw, then advance the forward, press and release and it's going. And then you can, of course, change the speed as you like. But again, for maintenance or positioning the workpiece prior to making a cut, you can use the forward button, press and hold. It'll operate as long as you're pressing and holding the button. Release it, stops. The return direction, that's not an issue. Return is almost always dead time in the cycle, like I said, so you'll press return, it'll go back to the home position at full speed. So more about positioning the workpiece. First off, you probably saw precision workpiece positioning pins. This has an electronic digital readout, wake it up, gives you distance from the blade to the fence face. Right now I've got it programmed to read in inches. You can also program it to read in millimeters, centimeters, furlongs, whatever you like. Position it, moves nice. So big thick piece of aluminum plate, probably overkill, but I like it. Another option for positioning the workpiece, say you have a mark on the workpiece and you want to cut through the mark. We offer a laser guideline light. This one has it. Again, on the panel face or in the controller, press the button once, you get a laser line. We haven't actually aligned the laser line yet, just because we're going to take it all apart for finished painting and shipping. But you get a nice red line on your workpiece. Allows you to line up your cut. Press it again, turns off. Another nice feature this one has, the guidepost, well, the part we call the guidepost here, carries the upper blade guide. And the height is adjustable. The thought being you want the upper blade guide just above your workpiece, so that you minimize the length of free blade between the upper and lower guides. Gives you a more stable cut, all around better. Also, there is a guard here attached to that upper guide. So the unused portion of the blade is guarded. As standard on these, we have what we call a crank style. Normally there would be a hand crank up there. You jump up on the table, turn the crank up, down, adjust the position of this. On bigger saws like this, actually getting up on the table and making that adjustment, it's not popular. So put a motor on it. We have here just a little 3-position spring to center switch. Replace the crank with a motor, adjust up and down. Has limit switches at both ends so you can't over travel it. I think on the next one I might make it a little faster. Also, I might be inclined to put some more buttons on this control pin, but this is a new feature for us, and that's what happens every time you start something new. It's like, oh, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can go this. But at some point you have to stop designing, deliver a product. So raise it, expose however much blade you need to work on your workpiece. A little bit more about the table drive. You might be able to see here, we use as the drive element a tooth timing belt. So on this machine, the guide element is this linear round rail. The type of rollers we're using, they're not the typical recirculating ball bushings. These are a dimensionally interchangeable part that actually uses small cam followers. And then it has a scraper in front of the cam followers on the rail, so it keeps the rail clean, but they're much less sensitive to damage. If you've ever used recirculating ball bushings, they can be easily damaged, and you hear this horrible sound of all those BBs hitting the floor, and you just scrapped a $300 part, maybe $400 part. So these are actually a little more expensive, but they're much more robust. So that's what's riding on this round rail, so you get a dead straight cut. And then the timing belt is used as the drive element. The timing belt's proven good. This is a very long stroke. So if you try to use a ball screw or something like that, it just gets ridiculous. The timing belt is easy to extend to a long reach. It's also relatively insensitive to problem dust, dirt, banging into it, misalignment. It doesn't care, it just works. So it works. It's a very good choice for this application. I believe that's it for this machine. Like I said, this is a pretty full-featured machine, also a big machine. We can specify the model 2054 is almost always a built-to-order machine. So if you need a machine wider, taller, longer, different features, painted pink, we can accommodate you. If you have any questions, like to discuss a specific application, please feel free to call or email us here at Forrest Manufacturing. Thank you for your time.